that's not very big. Okay, well, let's just go with this. At least it's not inverted. So let me draw here kind of what we're talking about right now, and that we have in you know, a set of boxes here. We have the whole election, and then inside that is one or more devices, which we can draw a couple of devices here that may be involved. And so you have any number of devices. And then inside that would be the cast vote record inside of what they call a cast vote record here. And there's maybe many of these. So because I don't have space, we'll just put dot, dot, dot. There's many of those. Inside that is the contest vote, which means a given contest. There's a whole list of these. Okay. And then inside those are the ballot selection items. Okay, so it makes sense at first because you say, well, gee, this makes sense because there's lots of ballot selection items on a given, these ballot selection items are the marks on the ballot. So if I have a ballot here, here's the whole ballot, and then on the ballot itself would be a contest. And inside the contest would be the selection vote. You know, you have a possible place where you can color it in to vote for the different options. And okay, so let me just a second. I need to turn everybody off, because if you happen to make a small noise, it will click over to you. We don't want that. Okay. All right, now, so here's the ballot. Okay. Okay, the ballot is let me write down what these things are. This thing they call an election, and I'm going to skip one level that they have there. This thing is a device. This thing inside the device is a cast vote record. This thing inside the cast vote record is a contest. This thing inside a contest is the ballot selection. All right. So here's the ballot selection here. There's potentially a bunch of contests on a ballot. So you say, well, that makes sense because it's like branches of a tree. So you have the, if it's a tree, you draw them upside down. You have the election, and then you come down and you have potentially many devices. Then you have on those inside of devices, CVRs. Then inside of CVR, you have the contest. Inside a contest, you have ballot selection. Okay, that's what it is now. So in a given, if you're going to be passing these data structures over, the JSON is going to look a lot like this. So JSON is basically going to just enumerate this, and it actually would kind of look like this in text. All right, so it's like one chunk, and it's built like a tree. The main problem with this is that this is not how the data is actually derived, because it's actually derived with the leaves first, and you don't know where the branches are until later. Because as you look at a ballot, the first thing that we're going to get here from the ballot is a digital scan. Okay, well, that is in their model. It's right here under ballot image. it's inside the cast vote record. So cast vote record is kind of like the ballot level is right here. This is where you have a scan, right? Starting at that level is one digital scan. So step one, we don't know what's on the ballot yet. We don't know where these so if we, in other words, if you said, okay, I've got a marking on the ballot, that's going to be your first step, is to extract the marking. Well, you don't know which contest it's in. All you know is where the marks are. You don't necessarily know that there's a contest here. You just know that there's a mark there. In order to work with this JSON system, you do have to know the entire tree in order to get down to the leaves and fill in the ballot selection first, and then work your way up. And that's one reason that it's not good. The second reason is because we can't separate out the digital scan here level and the lower level as you work your way up. So basically, this cast vote record has the file in it. Well, the file should be down here because that's the first level. That's the most simple level of how we're processing this. We get some files. We don't even know what they are yet. After we get the files in, we can maybe figure out which type of ballot it is. We can figure out what type of ballot once we look at the file. So that needs to be pretty low. And then the next step is we might get figure out where some bubbles are. Say, here's some XY coordinates of some bubbles. See if they're there based on the type of ballot. Then after you do that, then you would be told what the contest is. Fill those in to what the contest is. Then after that, you would be able to work your way up and you would comment on which type of device it is. The reason we don't like the system the way it is now is that we can't systematically freeze this level. So here's what we would rather see. Let me just leave that. This is the given structure now. It's a tree structure. And what we want to do is turn it into a non-tree structure. So the UML it pushes you in the direction of using tree structures, and so does JSON. But we claim the tree structure is improper and actually doesn't fulfill our needs, because the processing paradigm that's being used here right now is that of a single machine, and especially if it's a DRE machine, direct recording electronic voting machine, because it has to know, what does it have to know? It has to know everything. And it spits out everything about that vote. And you could have this structure coming out of it. That would work fine for DRE because it knows everything and it has to spit out this chunk of well, it would be the CVR level here. And you could possibly, because you have to, you know what the contests are, you know the person votes, you know everything about it. And so you can easily do this. You can fill in the ends of the tree with no problem. Or if it is a single manufactured machine that knows everything, including if it's a scanner. Let's say it's a scanner here. I'm talking not an optical scanner, but a digital document imaging scanner. So in this type of scanner, what you would you would have to know everything about what? The ballot types. You'd have to know, including in that, where the bubbles are, contests, everything, if you're going to be able to turn this out. So we don't want machines that know everything. Basically, it's a security issue. The security issue is on a need-to-know basis. You've all heard about this. If people want to set up security, then they don't tell everybody everything. If you only get what you need to know, you can't necessarily put all the dots together, and you can't cheat on the system. This DRE can cheat on the system because it knows everything, and it can make a complete CVR, which is completely fake, because everything is known. This guy here, a scanner that knows everything, can also cheat. So we don't want this cheating to be allowed by the structure. And we also want to enable a different structure of processing. And the structure of processing is basically a commercial off-the-shelf scanner here. Okay, so in this scanner, you still do you're still going to do image scans, okay, of the ballots, but what you get out is you know nothing. So this is brain dead, except for the fact that it can make really good scans. It can deal with what types of issues. See if I'm still showing up here. It can deal with contrast to make sure it can get alignment, and maybe even the orientation, as in right side up or upside down. What you can have on the ballot is, you can still see this, is some lines, and that can be used to line up to fill these in a brain dead fashion. You don't have to know anything about the ballot or what's on it. And the result of this would be the first table, if you will. We're just going to use tables for right now because they're easy to understand. So we have a file name, and the other things that we have in this, they have it here in this, let me see. In this model, they have the file descriptor, a file name, and a MIME type. That's fine. And then what I propose is also to have the MD5 message digest hash signature. We'll just say signature, even though some people don't use that term. But essentially, it is, let's just say MD5 hash code, right? It's like a checksum. All it does is detect if there's been any changes to the file. And so the file name, this is something that these off-the-shelf scanners can do, and you would make this table up. Okay, so this is the result of this section, and actually, if you will, it's part way down this tree because we're going to be pulling out of it, but we don't know what's on it yet. But we still want to freeze this. So we've got this table here where, let me draw a few more lines. So each ballot that goes through the system in a work unit. So this block right here is for one work unit, which is probably a precinct or a batch of ballots. So it goes through the image scanner, and you get this file, And you also have on the disk a whole bunch of PDF files, for example, of all the images. So this file name here, this table here, these file names actually index into the data down there. And this hash code here can be generated and you can check to see if there's been any changes to the file. This entire block can then be secured. This whole thing would then be run through and you get an MD5 number out of it, and you put it, you're not going to be putting it, you can put it there, but you don't want to be self-referencing. This MD5 descriptor would be in our another header saying for this chunk, we have to have another table. This work unit, okay, hopefully I'm still showing it. And this is the MD5 hash right there. Keep track of the work units. So the work units would be something that would be generated either at a precinct or at a central office running through batches of, say, vote by mail ballots day by day in batches. And there are different ways of doing it. Some of them sort them by precinct. Some of them sort them by, not by precinct, but by something else a little bit larger, such as a city council district. That's how they're doing it in San Diego. And then the work unit is a batch. So we have a number of ballots here. It's not too many. The number typically in a batch in San Diego is 400. Precincts are about the same size, but they vary quite a bit. Batches don't vary as much. They have almost always 400. So then this chunk here can, and this is the important part, can be forever unchanged. After it's produced, it is for then forever unchanged. We don't have to update it. It is frozen. And this is the problem between the two, because this other chunk over here cannot be frozen because it's a big tree and the data files are stuck up in this area right here inside the tree, inside of a device. Now, associated with this work unit and our other table can be the device code. And we probably want to have another table that has devices. Okay, you have a device code and you have the attributes of the device. So basically the codes are the indexes into the other tables. So it's not a tree, it is basically a relational database concept. So now we've got this frozen, very low level image scans. Now you can argue here what's in this. Sometimes you may be able to imprint a number on each ballot as it goes through, and in that case, then you would have that in the work unit data table. We have some more things here. So if we can put that on, it might be the same as the file name, like image 1455.pdf. What is that? That is imprinted on there is number 1455, perhaps. At this level, we haven't looked at the images yet. All we're done, because remember, we want this scanner to be able to be completely brain dead, have no information whatsoever about elections or contests or anything else. And because it's brain dead and it comes out with this thing here, this is one of the qualities that we want to have in our requirements for security. So in this case, we would have an extension here. What we'd have here is this would be the imprinted number. If you have the capability of doing that. Otherwise, you're just going to come up with some sort of a sequence number for the file name, and you're not going to have the imprinted number. That would be optional. Okay, so that's at this table here, which is the simplest step that you can take from ballot to digital form. And there's really no opportunity, or very little opportunity, for any hackers or the like to get into this, because they don't have any information at this point about the structure of the ballot, where the bubbles are, and what they mean. And they'd have to have a lot more information to be able to do anything with it. What they could do, though, is to stuff additional ballots in here. So we would have a ballot in here that's maybe they say, well, we like this ballot, and so what we're going to do is we're going to put a whole bunch of those into this list. So then they would just repeat and put all those in number of ballots. What we want to have to defeat that is on each ballot would be a unique number that's non-sequential, and probably one of these hash code type numbers. Doesn't have to be absolutely unique, but it needs to be almost absolutely unique, and something that rarely would be coming up twice. And so what you would have here is this number on the ballot. This is an example ballot. Would then be able to be later detected. Now, we haven't done that yet. So if somebody tried to insert these in, we have to be able to detect that. We haven't actually, there's no way that we can see that yet, because this is a brain dead scanner. It doesn't have the capability or any knowledge about this potentially unique number. All right, now let's erase this part here, which was the old structure. The new structure then is this data table for the locked up with the work unit table. When we go over here, we're going to have, I'm going to repeat that one in a more abbreviated form. This is, let's call it the work unit table. And what does it have? It has these data tables here. You have a work unit ID, and you have a of that whole table once it's done, which could be a separate file. That's probably the right way to do it. This is just a CES comma separated value file. So you have an ID, you have the file name, and you have its MD5 code so that it can't change. That's the work unit table. Then you have this. This would grow as we build. As we get more of these. So each one of these line items here points to down into a given. This is just a repeat of what I had over there. This is the image table. Image table, just make it a comma separated value table with file name, MIME type, handle, and imprinted number. Maybe some more fields. But that is the image table that has from a brain dead scanner. Next step, move to this side, right this way better anyway. So we have a brain dead image scanner, first step. And this has to be brain dead most of the way because it doesn't have any other information. Now the next step is, and the output of this is what? It's the image table. And the associated images on disk. And then we have this work unit table, which is going to be built of all these various image tables. So as we run these, also the work unit table has a device ID. And so the device ID points into the device table. There'll be a device table here of all the possible devices. You know, you're going to have the name, version, what kind of device it is in a table. It has an ID number and attributes for the devices. Okay, this device table ID, we'll call it a device ID, DID, right here. That's going to point down here into the device table. Which device created this image table? Then this MD5 code is the one off of the image table here. It'd probably be good to have a format where the image table has some sort of a header or footer. It might be better to make it a footer, but you want to have this, somehow you need to lock that up and have it be, at least have its own hash code there. I'm not sure about that. Let's leave that off for now. The hash code is only in the work unit table right here. So this hash value is the calculated MD5 here, goes up into that spot. We have an image table and the images. We have also over here the work unit table. Which points to these. Each line would point to one of these, and so forth. Work unit table points to each one of the image tables at that point. And then the next step is to resolve the ballot identifier on the ballot so that we can decide what the ballot type is. And so essentially we're going to be taking these images and figuring out the branches of the tree. We don't know the ballot yet, so we don't know which, in other words, at this stage of the game, we're just resolving what kind of ballot it is. Then the next, and what do we need for that? We just need to know the location of the ballot identifier. So this software right here, the only thing it knows would be, can take the image table, the image out, determine the ballot ID. And if there's multiple images per ballot, as in these images here are PDFs, let's say. But if you have a multiple page ballot, you may have several PDFs for one ballot. And then you would be matching up ballot IDs potentially in order to resolve where they all are. If, and this kind of will boggle your mind, if it's in the same work unit. Hopefully it would be preferred if the multiple pages would not span work units. They normally wouldn't if there were precincts, because a person turning in their ballot in a given precinct will have both pages there. They might just get mixed up. If it's a vote by mail ballot and you have batches in the work unit, there's a chance that you could have the page one of the husband, page one of the wife in the same envelope, page twos together, and then you would want to mate those later potentially. Now, the going thought pattern is, no, you don't have to match them back up, but this would let you do it if you wanted to. The next step of the, and these are, let me emphasize this, these are logical steps. They're not necessarily whole separate pieces of software, but they are logical steps in the process, and they could be separate pieces. The next step is we have to have, this is the information that we need. You have to have where the location of ballot ID. This one, you need the information of where are the bubbles. Right, so you'd have XY coordinates of bubbles. Still don't know what they are. And then the result of this, the result of this step here is we would fill in, not on the, this image table, you can't fill it in on this image table because it's frozen. It's frozen. So you would have basically an associated table to that. This has an ID number in it. And so you would for each one of these steps, you would have then the associated table with the same ID, and this time with the ballot ID that you would read. It would be a separate little table like that. Then down here, what do you need here? You need to know where the bubbles are. And so then this is when you finally get into the ballot selection. I should put it here because this is the level that we have now. Ballot selection level comes next. What was selected on the ballot? We don't know what the contests are yet. We just know that there's bubbles at a certain place. Why do we not know the contest? It's because this is a need-to-know basis. You don't need to know that yet. So at this point, you have now a table of ID and X. These could potentially be just more levels here, but I'll just make it a separate table for now. You have the XY coordinates and 0 or 1. And I know there's some other attributes that you guys have discussed about the level of quality of this 0 or 1. But for now, let's just use that. So this is the ballot selection. And I'm not saying that these have to be separate. The only real critical thing in our mind here at Citizens Oversight is that the image table has to be frozen, freezable, and not part of any other data structure. These can be the same data structure. These could be JSON or whatever you want. I think it'd be just as easy just to put it in a table. Okay, then you have ballot selection, where they are, and now given this information, if you had just the ballot ID, you might want to from this, this implies the ballot type. Or it could be, yeah, I guess what you have there is a ballot type also, or a ballot style, I've heard it said. So the ballot type or style implies getting this information. If you don't know the ballot style, you can't tell me where to look for the bubbles. You've got to first pull this out, then look for the bubbles, then you can create this ballot selection. Then you add the contest information. And then you get the contest level that was expressed before. And that is later on in the process. So you can't, in other words, the tree structure is improper because you don't know which contest you're talking about at this level if you're on a need-to-know basis. And then you end up with a contest down here. Now this structure right here, this part of the structure can be very much like what we have today, because it doesn't matter if it's in JSON or anything else. But the point is that you'd like to be able to have for a given ballot ID and a list of XY coordinates, you would be putting these numbers on, but you don't know what the contest is yet. So in the end, our true goal here is that you could still use the structure that's implied by the current CVR standard by pulling out a line from the image table and pulling out a line from each one of these, potentially several lines from each one of these, and then putting it into that JSON data structure. But what is the point of doing that? It really doesn't happen very often because the way ballots are processed is by work unit. Either you're going to be at the polling place, and this is good to make a note of. This step of making the image table is what you can do as people turn in their ballot and put it through this first brain dead scanner and create that image table and so forth in the device. Nothing is counted yet. It's not the end of the day. Nothing should be counted until the end of the day. When this is all done, we get this MD5 code, which can then be printed out on a report. This expresses the result of all of the scanning in that polling place in one number. And it's very, very difficult for any hacker to go in and insert ballots in without this MD5 code being the same. Now that assumes they didn't put them in to begin with. They don't, but they'll be detecting that either by comparing the number of ballots with the poll data, the poll and book data, or noticing the, where do I have it here? When we are looking at the ballot style in this semi-unique ballot ID, we'll say unique for now, even though it may not be perfectly unique. But you'll have a unique ballot ID written on the ballot. If somebody tries to insert ballots into the system, then it's likely that they'll be using a ballot ID that is the same. If they just copy the file, it has the same ballot ID. There's a chance they could be really advanced and come up with their own ballot ID, and then maybe in this case you wouldn't be detectable by that approach. But the benefit of this is when I talk to people who are pro all hand counted paper ballots, which I'm not a proponent of, but we do want to be able to get almost to that level where as early as possible through a brain dead scanner, we create a image table which has this work unit table, so there's information about it, and this would be kind of like the header line, but it could be then united into a table. So this same thing here would be the ID of the device, the file name, the code, and so forth, the image table. This would be this part of it here would be frozen for a work unit. So then what happens in the polling place, this data here is frozen before it goes through any additional processing. Before, the next machine would be provided with how to extract the IDs, how to get the bubbles, and the contest information. That's separate from this brain dead scanner. And in fact, it could be split up into pieces if you want to do it that way and logically pass this work unit through it. It is not a ballot by ballot process. It is a work unit process. And the work units are frozen into place before the next step takes off. And because they're grouped together, this is called block security. This MD5 right here is the block security. And that's one principle. The other principle is step partitioning. So we're going to partition these steps into steps like this so we can go step by step by step. And that way we can validate only as much information as necessary got to this piece of software. This one only got so much information, this one. By doing it this way, we don't have to have full disclosure about what's in the process. We don't have to have this open source software doing the processing as long as they don't have full information. If it's step partition, then this could be closed source processes here and thereby have proprietary approach to it. But if they can document, look, we don't have any way of determining even where the ballot ID is at this point. We don't have that information. We don't have this other information. There's no way that we're processing it there. Then you can say, well, that the information isn't getting in, and so then you're somewhat feel safe that they're not monkeying with it at that level. So essentially the proposal, and I'll try to specify it more in, I already showed you the blocks of how the steps are partitioned, but was a little bit too general, so I don't think people understood. The main thing that we're interested in is to make sure that the image table and these image tables, which there's one for each work unit, we'll draw them back here. So I also should say this. So at the polling place, you have a frozen thing, and also you have the issue at the central office where they still have to do the same thing, where they have batches, okay, and they do pre-processing of VBMs. That means is that before the election day, they're actually allowed to so before election day, they are allowed to start processing the vote by mail ballots. And what they should do is only get it up to the image table level and the images. I guess I should put the database here of the images, because those are all associated. The image table with its images is one data set, frozen with the MD5 security, and that's what they would do in the pre-processing of vote by mails, only to that level. Then on election day, after the polls close, they can sit there and take all of those images and run them across this next set of software. But also they can publish these image tables instantly. So as soon as the polls close, all these image tables that were collected in the pre-processing of the vote by mails should be disclosed to the public. And what we want also is these image tables at this level. And we would like to have this standardized too, in terms of this information, where the bubbles are, then what those XY coordinates, what those contests are. And I think if you process it this way, some of the issues that the group's been talking about in terms of making sense of what some of the descriptors are and where to put them will naturally fall out into the appropriate table level. Okay, so that's, I guess it's the end of what I was planning to say. Now, there's 6 participants, and let's see if we have any, since I do have this, you can unmute yourself. See, all in new print will be muted. No, unmute. Okay, so everybody is unmuted. Please mute yourself if you don't want to talk, but does anybody have any questions? No questions? Okay. Well, we've been talking at the CVR, the Cast Vote Record Standards group, and they had proposed, let me get back to looking at I believe you can see my desktop here, and they're these classes, but really this is UML, which is Universal Modeling Language. It's really not appropriate for, it's more appropriate for like process modeling versus this type of model, but I think it could be used for that. We just need to, this level here, for example, the reporting device, what they're assuming is one device creates everything under it. The cast vote record, including all the images, including all the ballot selections. Mute everybody again. You can unmute yourself if you want to. So the single reporting device. So what the paradigm in their mind is direct response, direct recording electronic device, or a scanner that knows everything. And if you know everything, then you can alter it. If you don't have everything in it, then you can't alter it. So we need the reporting devices should be on a per work unit basis. The cast vote records need to be combined into work units or blocks. And then we need to have essentially these as separate tables that have the same ID in the table. So this is one cast vote record per ballot, essentially, would be the concept. And then one contest vote, or many contest votes on per ballot, but you wouldn't necessarily know that until after you've extracted the ballot selections. There's many ballot selections on the ballot. So you start with the cast vote record, work unit, so a work unit of many cast vote records. but not all of them. Reporting device is indicated. But then there's a work unit table, and that's the thing that, see if I go back to this. That's as big as I can make it, I guess. Sorry about that. I was hoping to get the full shot. But this work unit table is at the top. Then we have an image table, which is each one of these line items corresponds to one work unit. The work unit has a bunch of images defined here and by the PDF files or other image files. The device ID references which device created these work units as a scan. Then there may be more device IDs here for other pieces of software as it gets processed through the system. If you're going to do everything at once and a vote recognition system that's separate from the scanner, then you might have only one more device ID, different line item here that says software brand X does or you can split it up into just extracting the ballot ID and then doing the ballot selection. It could be a different vendor if you want. This could even be a web service or a cloud service. You put the image table up on the cloud, and all it knows is where the ballot selection, where they're supposed to be once you've done this here. You could do that before you put it up there. And you put the ballot where the bubbles are. It knows nothing about what the vote is on there, so it's very, very safe. It just looks for XY positions and tells you if there's something there. And then you can have another service. So we break this up into services with a device ID or a service ID is maybe a better way to think of it, because these are not necessarily devices. And why didn't I use more colors? I have a bunch of colors here, but we'll call this a service ID. Right there, to define which service it is that did that step. Again, goal for us is to have this image table and the images frozen and never altered. And you can't get that in the current structure, because the current structure that you see in this diagram has everything as a child. So this whole structure here is conceivably one data structure. And these are children of this. Now, potentially, it would not be in JSON. It is. It's embedded like each one of these contest votes. There's a bunch of them are embedded within the cast vote record as children, kind of like line items inside the parent here. And then inside the cast vote would be these children. And what we want to have is just the ballot image line item here separated out and never altered. So it has to be removed from the JSON structure as a separate item that can be completely frozen, never altered, and thus the MD5 hash code will remain the same. Well, I hope this has helped. I'll open it up one more time to see if anybody in the group has any comments. Does anyone want to speak? I think you can just speak up or unmute yourself if you want to.
Yeah, I'd just like to say something quickly that this that we're talking about here is a cast vote record. A cast vote record is what is produced after determining what has been voted upon. So there is nothing prohibiting a digital image or a PDF or anything else to be saved outside of it as well. The ballot image is something that would be saved inside the cast vote record, but you can also partition it separately on disk and still have that. It is required to have an MD5 hash or a digital signature of some sort and saved separate and apart, either partitioned or on a completely separate memory device. And so I would agree in the terms of when you were capturing a digital image, but that digital image from the brain dead scanner will never actually create a cast vote record. And we already have in use and that have been certified systems that do exactly what you are describing.
Okay, so Ryan, I don't know you by name, but can you tell me tell me about yourself a little bit more? I'm just new to your group here, but who are you and why do you say that you already have it?
I'm with the EAC, the United States Elections Assistance Commission,
Oh, okay.
and previously from the California Secretary of State's office.
Oh, perfect. Okay, good. So you're making some points. Let's talk about those. This is a good opportunity. So the cast vote record as defined here, is that what you're talking about? Or are you talking about a different cast vote record?
The cast vote record is the record of the vote selections that a voter voted for a single ballot type. And so
as
that is
determined by the scanner.
Yes. As interpreted by the scanner, because
yes, as interpreted by the scanner.
Yeah, because it could be a COT scanner that is being interpreted by a separate device, as was being discussed there. And there are multiple systems that have that. And so the COT scanner is a brain dead scanner, and all it is doing is capturing an image, as was being discussed, but that image is never going to produce a cast vote record. A system that contains software will then end up creating a cast vote record, and you still have the image separate and apart.
Okay, so I think this is typical when groups get together from different areas. There is I think a terminology issue here about the word cast vote record. I think it's bad to use that terminology because the word cast vote record implies that you've extracted the vote from the data already. And what we're saying is that there is this cast vote record right here, which is the image table and all the images. And that's enough of a record to actually.
But that's not a cast vote record, and that's never been a cast vote record.
Well,
what that is it's an image of the ballot, and that is defined separate and apart from a cast vote record. A cast vote record is the extraction for tabulation.
Okay, but
and that's industry standard and has been since the 1990 standards.
Okay, so this is why I'm saying is that the terminology is getting us tripped up here, because what's been standard paradigm in the industry is a single device that takes in a ballot, looks at it, usually detects using optical scanning, small detectors, figures out what the vote is, and then spits out a cast vote record. Done. What we're trying to do.
Well, the older machines don't even do that. The older machines do that internally, don't create any cast vote record, and just increment summary totals.
Yeah.
The newer machines do have cast vote records, yes.
Right. So, but in either case, if you wanted to get in between the, you couldn't do this, but if you wanted to say you have to use a cast vote record between where you go and total those up inside your machine, it's sort of in there somewhere. They've decided what the vote is before they increment those totals. And they.
Because you're talking about a library of equipment that's certified and in use, and what you're prescribing and describing here is almost the ground rules for designing a different system that meets these goals, which is not what we're trying to do with our CVR export. It's something that the system creates, which contains all this information.
Okay,
and,
well, that may be your goal, but our goal is a little bit different. And so we're in this trying to provide oversight, and we're trying to increase the security of the process. And to increase the security of the process, we want to lock up blocks of data such as this image table and work unit table. Now, that's not a cast vote record.
I understand that. But
And
the The systems that are already certified have security and built in that's been audited and part of the certification process.
That may be, but
And not only that, but the other piece of it is that is one implementation, and we are not trying to stymie innovation and or determine one specific type of implementation in creating interoperability. What we are trying to do is make sure that the cast vote record has a standard behind it. How you get to the cast vote record, you're going to have different interfaces, you're going to have different processes, and so what is being described by the cast vote record here is the second step of what has just been described on the board for a COTS scanner. And not just a COTS scanner, but even some of the scanners that have been made by, that are proprietary scanners. And what they are doing is they are partitioning out a digital image or an image of the ballot with the tables that are being discussed. And you have your work unit, as you want to call it, work unit table, which is a single side of an image, or it's a combination of both sides of a ballot that is created into one work unit, and that is partitioned separate and apart from a cast vote record, which is then created after, again, the close of the polls or whenever the time frame may be, where it does the interpretation through a set of software. And so in scanners that are certified today, there are systems that, as was stated, is truly a COTS scanner. What comes out of it is just a PDF. There is a set of PDFs that is sitting on one set of memory, and then later, and signed with an MD5. And then later, what happens is an interpretation is created. After an interpretation is created, there is then produced an output of a cast vote record. And in that cast vote record is also embedded that image, because you may need to pull that image back up and actually make modifications to that image based on adjudication rules such as write-in and other types of things. And so you now have the digitally signed, unaltered image sitting on one set of memory, and then a cast vote record with a copy of that digital image embedded inside of it.
okay, but here's the problem with that. I agree with everything that you said. Indeed, even with what I've said here, you could still use the JSON type output, which tries to pull in all the pieces into one, the image back into the cast vote record and say, here's the image in case you want to look at it. What we want to get to is this frozen image table that has its own, not an image by image MD5, but a block MD5. And why do I say that? It's because otherwise you can, on the system that is described here on this, the JSON structure, if the device knows everything about that, the data that's in it, and it can change it at will. You could go in and change the image and come up with a new MD5. Where is the separate frozen?
Again, let me repeat this. We take a COTS scanner. A COTS scanner creates a scan and saves it. Let's just say saves it right then and there on that COTS scanner. Knows nothing about it. Then it pushes the image on. Pushes the image on to another set of software. That set of software is what then does the interpretation and creates a cast vote record. So you do have, even if it's a ballot by ballot or a bundle, and it could be both, an MD5 on what sits on that scanner still knows nothing. That is one implementation of a voting system. That is not being mandated. That could be mandated by state law, but that's not being mandated.
Well,
yeah, and similarly, just as talking about posting them up to the cloud and everything else. As a matter of fact, in California, there has been a determination. Actually, there's been two determinations, but one determination is that ballot cannot be posted online, and so those are all things that are held up legally and by state statute. So in the exact same instance, yes, you could put out to the cloud all the digital images, all the PDFs, and something that was held on a COT scanner on a system that never had any knowledge about the ballot, and that is an implementation that a state could adopt.
They could, but
And there are systems that are already out there.
I'm not actually talking about states adopting it. I'm talking about oversight groups like ours adopting it, so that I can do whatever the hell I want. I don't have to get certification. All right.
But you also needed to have equipment that exists that is certified, producing what you want, and that's not part of what they're certified to do.
I know, and that's why I'm here.
They do what they do.
That's why I'm here.
No. I see. That's what you're working on.
The reason I'm here working on this is because we don't have what we need. And I'm trying to get it in there so that we can get what we need out of this. If I had what we need, I wouldn't need to work on it. So the reason I'm working on a technical level here is to make sure that when these things are defined, that we can get to the data that we need to provide our oversight. This has nothing to do with, yeah, go ahead.
The CVR group under NIST is trying to define a format that existing systems can produce files that meet it. We're not talking about designing new systems that are required to meet the new format.
No, I'm actually, I think it's both. I think if and by the way, I'm a member of the CVR group, so I'm in it. And so I'm representing a certain point of view. And the point
I understand.
The point of view is maybe different from other members, but I think it's still valid. The point is that, yeah, we're going to be trying to work with systems that are legacy systems that are producing, that maybe are not meeting our requirements as much as we'd like. But what we'd like to get to is at a certain level, and I don't care if it's a proprietary system or a commercial off-the-shelf system. We want to be able to get this image table frozen and never altered again, and document that it's frozen. The trouble with the JSON structure that's being proposed right now is I don't see any way to freeze all the images and to get one MD5 out that says this is the frozen,
because that's not a cast vote record.
A
cast vote record is the interpretation of those images.
Well, not really, because there's in this primary classes that you see here on the desktop. If you've got that kind of mode, you see there's a lot of data structures here that are not the cast vote record data structure. And within the cast vote record data structure are these subsidiary structures that are, part of it. And so the cast vote record is a bit of a misnomer for what this group is working on, because they're not working on just this one data structure. They're working on this whole assemblage of data structures, including which device.
They're working what's starting in the green, which is a cast vote record report. And that is what is produced after a ballot image has been interpreted. So that what happens before that could be in an implementation, and is in many implementations, a partitioned set of MD5 hashed images or PDF images of ballots. Exactly what is being requested.
Okay, so
what this group is working on is, after those have gone through the software, what is the output that can be tabulated? And that output is this cast vote record, because you cannot tabulate off of the image itself. You have to create interpretations of the image.
I agree with that.
Which can then be adjudicated and revised, and new summaries created, and amended cast vote records.
Yeah, I agree with everything that you said. I agree with. I'm not trying to really change this too much, except that the structure of how these are embedded within each other, I think, is invalid. all we have to do is change the way the arrows, how this data structure is defined. It's still a cast vote record. You still get the same information out of it, but the images would be partitioned off and frozen and not part of a ever-changing cast vote record, because as you go through this,
and again, because of things like adjudication, you do have adjudication. You have times where there are write-ins. You have time where there are marginal marks. You have time where where you have to go look at the image and actually make modifications to the cast vote record, and sometimes it may be an overlay on the image itself. However, prior to creating a cast vote record, you can still have the ballot images with an MD5 and that ballot set being locked and secured. That is one implementation that happens before you ever begin going into a cast vote record, because you have no interpretations. What we are saying is, in a cast vote record, if you are also going to use that digital image to make modifications for adjudication purposes, then you need to have a way and a means to embed that into the cast vote record. That is not prohibiting the use of a separate set of digital images, locked, stored, secured, partitioned.
Okay, but let me ask you this question. What do you have against locking up those images into a table that is block secured? Do you have something against that?
I have absolutely nothing against that, and it's standard to do so. What I do have is an issue with trying to define that within the terms of a cast vote record, because those have not been interpreted, and therefore they cannot be a part of a cast vote record by definition.
No.
So it would be somewhere separate and apart from what we are defining right here as a cast vote record.
Well, I think it only, by definition, what we're doing is defining what it is. So the definition is in flux. So you can't say by definition it's a certain thing when we're defining it. I mean, it could be defined that way just as easily as not. And so what I'm pushing for is to get this such that the thing that you say is standard, I want it to become not just an ad hoc standard. I want it to be written into what the standard is so that people understand and that it's interoperable that way. I can go in and get the image table and the images, know where all the work units are and which devices created them, and so that I can go and review all that. And I would also like to have where the bubbles are, all the XY locations, so I can go in and extract that. That's not expressed right now in this data structure. I want to get all of that defined such that I can go up to an election in county X and get their set of cast vote records and all the other data that it goes with it, and then leave there and have enough information that I can reprocess the election and just determine if they cheated or not, or if there was hacking, or if there was just mistakes made. So that's my goal. And so as part of my goal is to get, the trouble that I have with what you say is that, okay, you could do that off to the side and you could freeze it, but inside the cast vote record here, we have things that are going to be determined later, such as the ballot, the write-ins and the ballot status. That's a good one. The actual status of the ballot is determined later, whether, all the way downstream. What is it? Maybe it's needs adjudication and later it's adjudicated. So that value right there gets changed, correct? You agree with that, right? So since that's changing, I cannot secure the cast vote record because it's ever changing. And any MD5 I put on it will be obsolete the next time you change that. I don't know if you change that and the image or not, because there's no way to lock down the images. In fact, since you know everything about this, it'd be very easy to say, well, I don't like the result of that vote. I'm going to go in here and put in a different image and then put in the rest of the stuff too, because the images are not locked together so that you can't change them. If you lock the images together in a work unit, which indeed is a different concept than what the group has been working with so far, but if you lock them into a work unit, then it's very difficult to add, subtract, or alter an image, because you have that one identifier that comes out of a precinct or a batch that would lock it up. You understand, Mike?
And I completely understand what it is that is being discussed and requested. And again, I'm going to go back to the definition of a cast vote record and say that is outside the scope of what is a cast vote record. Those would actually be requirements around what we would call a scanner, and or the output of a scanner, not on the requirement of the structure of a cast vote record.
Well, I disagree with that.
Would it help?
So we'll need to find out who's defining the term cast vote record so that we can challenge that definition, because I disagree with what you just said. I don't want the cast vote record to be this loosey-goosey thing that is not locked up with security. And I mean, even when I came into the group, there's no MD5 descriptors in here whatsoever. None are mentioned, and there's no concept of security in how this thing is locked up so that people cannot alter it. And now if that's
could I give an overview? Can I give an overview of how our system currently works and how we would meet whatever standard this goes? I'm with ES&S.
Okay.
We have certified scanners which create cast vote records. Images, by the way, are a user option as to whether they are saved or not. But let's say they are. Basically, when you put a ballot through the scanner, it's a proprietary scanner. It's not a COT scanner.
Right.
It actually saves an image of each side as a separate file. Each of those images have a signature associated with it, an external signature file. The signatures are created by creating public and private signature pairs when the machine is initialized initially. So you can read it, but you can't write it, because only you need the public signature to read it. There's a cast vote record saved after each ballot is processed. When you close the polls, all of these files all get zipped together, and that file is encrypted and signed. So the media that goes to a central site has a bundle that's encrypted and signed. That's imported into our EMS, into a database. The EMS, so that's always there. You can always go back to the original files that are untouched. In the EMS, you can actually, through our software, look at the cast vote records and look at the images that they were created from. Any adjudication software would not change what's the original stuff. It would amend it or create a separate file. And to meet the standard, we would have this EMS create the format that's required by this standard. There's security built into this whole chain. It's not available for tampering, and it's more secure than just an MD5.
Yeah. Okay. So basically,
and those are requirements that are set forth by the voluntary voting system guidelines. And again, that is, and going back to the discussion of the MD5, it wasn't built into the diagram that was put on screen right now. But during the call yesterday, there was 3 different MD5 hashes or digital signatures of some sort that were discussed to be added into the next model because they were not on here.
Okay, so that means that it's basically, I do like, a lot of the way that you're going at ES&S, and so, and I put up on the screen here an example of ES&S produced, I believe it is Ballot Image, and it's got 2 pages in,
yes,
in one file. I did look into the PDF file, and it does not have an internal digital signature that I could see. but it does have an ID number, which is like a digital hash of the image. I would that is all well and good. The only complaint I have about your system, or I guess concern, and maybe you could answer this. You have everything in once. Let's say the DS850, a machine like that, right? You have the ability. What you're doing is you're scanning the ballot, both sides. It goes through, and then you have the smarts within that system to completely determine where the bubbles are and come out with the essentially the cast vote record for the ballots. And also you determine at the time whether the ballot was imaged well enough or something, and then it has a output stacking capability to go to one of 3 slots. Can you describe can you just confirm to me what you're doing there with those 3 slots? Isn't it sometimes you don't include a ballot in the scan, like you don't include it in the set if you don't like it for some reason?
It really depends on user option settings, how they want to handle their ballots. One of the bins is used for ballots that are not able to be processed, either because the scan can't be interpreted, or the code that's on the ballot isn't for the precinct that's defined, or something that prevents the ballot from being processed. There's another bin that all the ballots go into that don't have exceptions, or any that don't have exceptions that the user wants to have separated out. The third bin is used for user-defined exceptions, such as overs and unders and write-ins. And the user could identify whether they want those to be included in the totals or not.
Okay, so
depending upon the scan.
Let's say that I'm not trying to say that ES&S is an untrustworthy company or anything. Don't read that into what I'm saying. I'm just trying to be as suspicious as possible. Okay, let's say that
Sure.
you did have someone that did want to try to compromise the election, because you're extracting and recognizing the vote in one machine. You could potentially decide you don't like certain ballots that then you are outstacking as problematic and not including those.
You can't do it based on what candidates are voted. There are certain criteria that's defined as exceptions, such as an overvoted ballot, or a contest that you are pre-identified as wanting to consider it an exception if there's no votes cast, or a marginal bar. It's really those specifics. Or a write-in.
Or a write-in, since that is a requirement.
Are you able to, or do you add imprinting a number of some kind on the ballots as they go through at this time?
There is an option to imprint, spray imprint a number on the ballot, yes.
Okay. All right.
And just so you know, I know Herb is on the phone, so he can speak to ES&S, but as somebody who has touched every single system that is in use in the country, I can tell you that that is all the similar technology of every system that is coming out to date, based on requirements, as we move forward to VVSG 1.1 and move forward. So how it is producing those is different, but the outputs are the same. That you get a digital image, and if it is by the exact same device that is creating the digital image, then that system creates a CVR and can create a digital image and a CVR, and you can save the digital image or not save the digital image, and those are separate and apart from the CVR. And you do have exception handling, whether it be through an adjudication system or a physical outstack or a stop through a COT scanner, and then there are those that are truly COT scanners. where they are just scanning. They're doing nothing other than scanning. And some partition those as single PDFs or single TIFFs or, a single image, and is partitioning, basically making a duplicate stack, one that is untouched and then one that is interpreted to create a cast vote record to be tabulated by their EMS.
So those are really all central scanners, I believe?
No.
No?
No.
Okay.
Okay,
Because
but
I mean, when you close the polls, you usually are required to print a report. And if you have a COT scanner, then you have to have real-time software that COT scanner is feeding in order to be able to do processing at least after the polls close.
Yes, that is correct, Herb. The implementation and as much as I can speak to that is public that is already out there, is there's a COT scanner that is connected to a Linux laptop in the precincts, and so the COT scanner is actually just pushing out an image, and then the Linux box is creating the cast vote record, but it is being completely separately partitioned and saved separate from a true COT scanner that sits on a ballot box.
So really, your COT scanner and the laptop with the software as a package is really your tabulator, if you will.
That is correct. But the difference is what is being output by the scanner. The scanner is truly not interpreting anything. It's creating two images, one that is interpreted and one that is bundled and saved.
Are they is that real time?
With the digital signature. What's that?
Is that real time, or is that after the polls closed that the image is processed? Does each image go to the laptop as it scans? I'm just curious.
So it has to be real time because you have to have overvote and undervote warning. So write in notification and everything else. So
sure.
Yeah.
Well, really, I mean, if you take a block diagram, whether it's proprietary or COTS commercial, you really got the same pieces. It's just packaged differently.
Correct. That's how every device that is currently going through certification it functions.
Well, we like this that you're going to the images because that does allow us to satisfy our need to, kind of see the original ballot in our review. The concern that we have is some of the things you say, that it's a necessity that you have. I mean, so there's two systems here. One that has a commercial off-the-shelf scanner and one that's proprietary. I mean, basically, those scanners are going to be doing exactly the same thing at the lowest level, which is just creating an image. So you can call it proprietary if you want, but I'd be willing to bet those proprietary systems go out and buy a lot of their scanning stuff from vendor A. That's the same crap that's in the commercial off-the-shelf scanner anyway. So then, at whether it's proprietary or not, we could still get out of this a frozen set. As you say, it's somewhat of an industry de facto standard to create a set of images that are bundled up and MD5 together, and that'd be what we want to get into a standard, whether it's this one or some other one that you guys don't have a problem with because it doesn't have the word CVR on it.
And that's not a de facto standard. That is an actual standard by the voluntary voting system guidelines. Is not that the images be maintained, because that is not dictated. It is if the images are maintained, then they must be digitally signed, and that's within the VVSG 1.1.
Yeah, digitally signed. How? Internal to each image, because that's not sufficient.
And we have external signature files.
Yeah.
One per image.
And those have to be somehow made public, because if if you have one signature inside the image, all it does is protect from either that image being changed by some error, or if somebody goes in and tries to fiddle with that image inside it. It doesn't mean the image was either not included or added in. The only way you can lock that up is to have a block that has a block signature so that you know that for this work unit, it's got the integrity that it had when we first started. And so if that is, what is this? Is there a standard designation? Is there a written standard, Ryan, regarding how these images are stored and the MD5ing of them? What standard is that? I just don't know.
Well, there's two standards that are in use right now. The Voluntary Voting System Guidelines of 2005, or also called version 1.0. And then there is the VVSG Voluntary Voting System Guidelines version 1.1, which we are migrating to right now, and as of July 6th, they become the standard.
So in that standard, they define something akin to the image table that is block, what I'm proposing here, which is block secured, or no? Because if not, then that's not a sufficient standard in our view, and so we'd want to get that one worked on, because we need to have the output of, say, a precinct or a batch, wherever they're doing this, be defined in a standard that this is the output of that device, and at a level, whether it's proprietary and how they've interpreted it, then we would want even if it's a proprietary scanner, to be producing the images. And of course, it's our position that they would have to be produced by law and made available to the public. Okay, that's just our position. I know there's going to be some debate about that, but from a technical standpoint, we want this standard to be able to accommodate our desire for doing public oversight. I'll take a look at those again. I did not see anything in it to the level of detail that I'm used to for such a public standard in terms of the data format and so forth, but I'll take a look to see if I can find it in those, because those were more just sort of glossy overviews for what would be out there rather than a very specific standard. So that, yes.
Yeah, and so to that point, if there is something that would want to be suggested under that, under that set of security requirements, that should be brought to the security working group, because this working group is truly the interoperability for cast vote records. And so on to how to secure those. And one of the things that the security group is working in conjunction with the cast vote record group is to make sure, which is where the discussion of digital signatures came yesterday, is, the NIST folks that are running the security group and the interoperability group are bouncing ideas back and forth, saying, here's what we're coming up with from interoperability. What do we need to do to make them more secure? And then that's being taken to the security group.
Well, that may be one way to look at it. I think that this, everything that is done should be viewed at least in this subject area with the voting systems. Everything should be viewed with an eye for security, and I think that the structure of these classes that are being defined by the cast vote record working group, I don't think that they're all cast vote records. There are other things here, and yet we want to interact with it and we want to interoperate with it. So we're not a device, we're an oversight group that wants to interoperate with the data that's being produced. And so the point is that we have a need for a certain type of data to be produced, and therefore we should be, I think, viewed no lesser than a manufacturer who comes to the table and says, we have a new product and we need to have this certain thing put in. What the standards groups usually do is say, okay, yeah, if there's not a reason not to do it, it doesn't look like it's going to impact really anything here that I can see in terms of the volume of data, or whether it could be used by any other group, or even that. We're almost a hair's breadth from doing this already. As you say, there's some things defined apparently in the VVSGs that go to some extent into defining what the data file should be for the images. And what I'm thinking is that if we can, now I will accept your point that if this cast vote record definition that's being defined here is defined for a specific purpose, where each for like interoperating between pieces of devices that exist in a certain installation, I just don't see that being the case. What is it that, I mean, basically you have a device that's producing cast vote records that could all be combined into one big election. And at that point, we want to interoperate with it, and we want to have the assurance that those records, the cast vote records for the images, were frozen. And so
yeah, and so I'm looking. Yeah, so I'm looking specifically at the VVSG 1.1 right now on section 219 for all voting systems that use telecommunications for transmission of data during pre-voting, voting, or post-voting activities. Capabilities shall be provided that ensure data are transmitted with no alteration or unauthorized disclosure during transmission. So if a digital image is being captured or a cast vote record is being captured, then the bundle cannot be altered during transmission. And I'm trying to keep going through and pull out a few more. The main sections are sections 6 and 7, but.
Okay, I'm pulling that up here so we can take a look.
That was also recognize that this is meant not to be prescriptive, but to identify requirements that allows flexibility of design.
Exactly.
Okay, well, I think we're past the point when flexibility of design is benefiting us here. The reason for standards is to pin down certain things so that there's not too many variations, and therefore we can improve interoperability. So I think that if there isn't any reason not to pin it down, you pin it down, and then if people want to violate the standard, I mean, that's always a possibility. Usually standards are not laws. This is different, huh?
You violate the standard, you can't be certified.
Yeah.
Which means you can't sell it.
Okay.
Yeah, so all precinct count voting systems, and again, this is not prescriptive in this set of standards, but it says all precinct count voting systems shall prevent data and transportable memory from being altered or destroyed by report generation. And so, again, we don't prescribe that it has to be an MD5 hash, but in certain areas, certain types of telecommunications, networking, and the like, actually state specifically that it has to be a, FIPS 140-1 or FIPS 140-2, 112-bit, and gets into the actual prescription of, at minimum, you have to do so on and so forth. And that's all dependent upon the type of communication that is being utilized.
No, I understand that.
Wait, can you scroll back up? I actually think you're on an old version here. I thought I just.
1.1 is 2012.
Yeah, so that's a draft version. That's not what was actually adopted. What was adopted was in 2015.
Okay, and then I'll try to get to the other one. No, I understand those are not the type of standard that we're hoping to get to. We're hoping to get to a very specific format. I mean, akin to the cast vote record, which tells you in this table is the file name, and here's final. So maybe I clicked on the wrong one.
That's it.
15. What section is it you're looking at?
I've been jumping around. I started with 219, then I went to the second one I read was 232, I believe, 23. but yes, for digital images, we do not specify the table structure. That has not been defined yet in any of our standards because the digital image has not been a requirement. It is a means. It is one method or mode.
That's true. But if it is used, then and I think that let's face it, everybody is pretty much going in that direction. Then I think that I'll have to look through this later. I did, I did look at this, and I've read it. I haven't studied everything, but it didn't look like there was anything very, very specific like what we had with this cast vote record. And if we're going to be
agreed, and this with the cast vote record, you're not going to find in this document either, because it doesn't get down to that specificity because we hadn't begun the interoperability work for what we call VVSG 2.0. So, I see where you're getting at, and I actually agree. I can understand that point of view. And so, what I would suggest is if you do want to see a structure built around a digital image for the instances whereby a digital image is being created, one thing that I would suggest is you might want to speak with John Wack, who is the head of the interoperability group or the lead for the interoperability group, and ask about branching off a group for digital image structuring, just as we have done for the cast vote record structuring. Because, the interoperability group has branched off into a lot of different subgroups to tackle different pieces of the interoperability. And so that would be my suggestion is if there is a separate set of structure that you would like to see specifically for a digital image, which is not a cast vote record, then that might be another interoperability group to start working on to feed to the main interoperability group, because it's the main interoperability group that is then going to push this to the Technical Guidelines Development Committee, and the Technical Guidelines Development Committee is the entity that actually proposes this information on.
Okay, so I understand that.
And that's pursuant to the Help America Vote Act.
Yeah, I understand that idea. I don't think that's the direction I want to go. I have been in the cast vote record meeting a couple of times, and I think that this thing is still in flux enough that it's possible that that we can get what I'm looking for done within the structure of the data here, because what we're talking about mainly is structuring the data. And do you structure it as a tree or as a relational database? You could do it either way, and you could transport it along, and everybody would be just as happy. So that's why if we spend a little bit of time thinking about the requirements of citizen review of what's going on, because I just don't think that this point of view has been expressed in these committees before. That's all, and it's a little bit new and different point of view, and so then that's a little bit upsetting to what they're used to doing. They go, oh well, that's not part of our cast vote record that we've defined before. Of course not, because you haven't been thinking about citizen review. And so when citizen review comes in, you go, oh okay, well gee, we've got to have to accommodate that somehow because this guy over here wants to review what we're doing. And
I mean, citizen review and the concept of creating digital images, actually began with the Humboldt County Transparency Project back in 2008. So that has been around, which is why digital images have begun to come into the norm, and why some of the standards have been written to allow for that, which also allow for adjudication and some of the other things. So, that process has definitely been around for quite a while, and that mindset and that thought of creating images and the ability for images to be reused utilized, because then same type of thing as for risk limiting audits. They talk about the need of having that same type of information and so on and so forth. And, and that's been around since 2011 when that was first implemented in California, under a pilot project. And so, all of those things. So I will say it has been around, but it's never a bad thing to bring up the point of view on another thought.
Yeah. And so
also your table structure is something we've used internally, not for this, but for files that are used by the tabulator, like an AutoMark. It had a file that was a list of all the files that were part of the election definition with MD5 hashes. And that file was encrypted and signed to not only, to protect against unintentional corruption or tampering. And so, I'm totally familiar with what you're describing.
Yeah. No, I think that things are logical, and the table structure is, very much a standard that, people understand. The JSON tree structure is sometimes really, really appropriate. I just don't think it's that appropriate for this. And what it does is it counteracts the desire that we have to get a block of data that is untouched. The trouble with this data structure is you could use the same data structure. Let's just talk about that for a second. Let's say we go through the step-by-step process that we had here, where you use a commercial off-the-shelf scanner, okay? And let's say they produce a cast vote record that includes just the ballot images right here, and that's it. And the file name and so forth, and let's put MD5 and so forth on there. But that's it. And in that first cast vote record, that's all you have. Then you pass it to the next machine and you go, okay, here's a rudimentary cast vote record. All it has is the information about the image files, and that's it. Now you carry that on. So then the next machine, piece of software that may be even a different vendor software, would then go in there and start analyzing those images and determine what the ballot selections and contests are and come out with the final cast vote record. But the problem is that that initial cast vote record in the final is different, and the images are not secured together as a block so that they can't be changed. You could probably do it if you said that this piece, these images that are on this in this cast vote record are all within some sort of a block, because you don't always have the whole election. You have some sort of a block that you're going to want to put together, a work unit that's not defined here. Somehow we need to have, I think, a work unit here, which is a set of ballots that are not the entire election, and they're not all the way down to the cast vote. They're in between. They're a batch or a precinct that are what I'm just calling a work unit right now, because I want to include both. And that is not expressed here either. So I don't know. There's no indication of what's in the precinct or what's in the batch. It's not part of this structure. Where is that defined?
What you're doing is you're specifying a design requirement. You're defining a design to fulfill what your goal is.
That's right. That's the whole idea what I'm trying to do is you have to have in the back of your mind a design that you're thinking of when you come up with the standard, and you'd like to think of as many as possible so that the standard data structures that you're coming up with here will accommodate all of them. And so you have use cases, and you have different ways of trying to get all of those different possibilities accommodated. And I'm not trying to eliminate other designs, if you will. I'm just saying that there's there's this approach, which if you were trying to use this cast vote record in practice, how would you use it? And in that case, if you did want to try to freeze the digital images such that we could use them as, and we could be comfortable with, yeah, those were frozen, and there's that data object of the frozen image files. I don't see it here, and so that's what I want to be able to see in this. You could probably do it, as I say, by using a rudimentary cast vote record and specifying the image, and then the file name and the data type and the MD5 for each one, and then, but there's no, yeah, there is a natural tendency, and you say I'm trying to design something. The design is that there's a natural tendency to have these things called precincts or batches. I haven't seen any place that doesn't have such things.
Yeah, but that's built into this file. I mean, the point of this file is to allow a system to create it without telling the system your tabulator has to be broken down this way. You have to save your data at this level, and this level, and this level, in this format. You know, my system today, which is certified, I can have the data that's sucked into the EMS create whatever kind of file we define in this group. And it has to be secure. I mean, once you create the file, that file, which is really a collection of cast vote records, it's not one per each. Once it's created, it has to be created with the security to make sure it doesn't get tampered with. Okay, I totally agree with that.
Yeah. Okay. So what I think we're in agreement there that the security is a good thing to do it, but what I am trying to get to is, let's see, I'm trying to see in the definition of this cast vote record group how the security is included, and I think it should be part of the standard. This is how you do it, because if you don't do it that way, you'll have all kinds of security that are not maybe as it hasn't been discussed enough. We want to talk it over and make sure that it's sufficient. And then, yeah, there may be certain designs that are eliminated from the scope of possible designs if we do such a thing. But I think that's a logical consequence of any kind of standard you come up with if it has muscle to it. Now, if the standard doesn't have enough definition to it, it's too many degrees of freedom. I mean, such a thing as the image type is a MIME type. That's a little bit too many degrees of freedom. I think I'd rather see the group that's to say, here's a list of possible MIME types that we accept. And if you use a PDF, then we prefer that it has use one of these compression methods inside, so that we can bound the number of things that we have to deal with, because our group is trying to not design something that's a little bit harder than your problem. Our design, our requirements are that we're able to accept anything that manufacturers produce, no matter what vendor it is, and be able to process. See, all
right, Ray. Well, I have to go. It's already 7 p.m. here in Washington, D.C., and we've been on this call for 2 hours and 10 minutes. So I appreciate your input. I'm glad that we had an opportunity to have this discussion, and I will look forward to continuing talking on CVR groups and other groups, but I need to get going.
Okay. Hey, thanks a lot for your time, Ryan. I appreciate you being able to get on the call at such short notice. So
Not a problem.
Yeah, let's end it now, because I think I've gone on and we've made a lot of progress in this. Thanks a lot for your time. Herb, I think that's, you're the guy with the ES&S, right? Already gone. Is Herb the guy who is from ES&S? I guess so.
I'm sorry, I was on mute, yes.
Okay, Herb. Okay, because I'm new to your group, I don't know everybody by name. I'm trying to get everything figured out here. Okay.
And I'm listed twice because my phone number is listed as well as me, so you didn't really have 6, you had 5.
Oh, okay. Only fine. Well, that's fine. I wanted to mainly be able to try to express this without writing a huge tome about it. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot for your help, Herb, and I will look forward to working with you in the future.
Same here.
Okay,
Take
so
it easy.
I will now terminate the call. Thank you, everybody, for dropping by, and we will go on from here. Thanks again. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.